Hello, everyone, and welcome to another very special episode of Benny TV, or another Ryan Rizzuti takeover. Unlike the last time I did the Ryan Rizzuti takeover, where I locked my dad in the car for an hour so I could take this show over, I did not do that today. He will be back later. I just sent him on a wild goose chase today. I told him I needed a large bucket of steam. So he's driving all around the island looking for a bucket of steam. I think he'll be back around halfway through the show. I have a couple of things I want to talk about on my own, and then I have something I want me and him to talk about. So he will be on the show later today, but it's my show. It's the Ryan Rizzuti Show. I have a couple of things I want to talk about today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, for listening. Please like the Strong Island page. Please share this with your loved ones, your friends' loved ones, your friends' loved ones, friends, cousins, former roommates, just anyone you know. Just share it. Just share it. Let's get it out there. I have a lot of things I want to talk about today. As you guys know, I love movies. I have a couple movies I want to talk about today. I saw 3 movies in the past week since I was last on the show. 2 of them were documentaries. They're all independent films. All of them were at Sundance last year. The first film I want to talk about is the Mr. Rogers documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor? It's a really fun, exciting documentary, which you'd be surprised because it's Mr. Rogers. Fun, exciting isn't something you'd normally expect. But it's a documentary all about the life of Mr. Rogers, how he got the show, how the show lasted as long as it did, his entire life. And the best way to put it, with all the movies I'm going to talk about today, I'm not going to get into spoilers because it's better not to be spoiled, but 2 of them are documentaries, so they're true stories, so there's not too much to spoil. But the best way to say it with Mr. Rogers was Batman in our world. He was Batman. All he did was want to care for kids. He was a rich kid who became an orphan, who went away, and they actually do this parallels a lot in the actual documentary. And he was a man, everyone always wants to put things on Mr. Rogers of what he could have been. He was a closeted homosexual. He was a terrible person. He was a Marine. And he killed all these people. He had tattoos, sleeve tattoos. But none of that is true. They do talk about that as a mild spoiler for the documentary. None of that is true. Mr. Rogers was a good, wholesome man who was actually an ordained minister, who they do talk about in the documentary from one of his friends who was also a minister or someone in the clergyhood, who said that Mr. Rogers did more with his show than any one minister was able to do with a sermon. And it shows that essentially his show was a sermon without being religious. But it was a sermon. It was him teaching kids. And they covered everything. They covered the Robert Kennedy assassination. He covered segregation. He had a black cop on the show who, at a time when black people were being segregated, not allowed in the same pools as white people, he had him on his show sharing a little pool to wash his feet with him to try to show, like, I'm not for that, I'm against that. And it's a really transcendent documentary. It's not too long. It's 90 minutes. You'll cry probably 6 times. I almost cried 6 times. Everyone who's seen it has absolutely loved it. I highly recommend it. It's a transcendent film. If you don't know a lot about Mr. Rogers, I highly recommend it. I'm part of the last generation to have seen Mr. Rogers' show's first run, current. It ended around the time that I was little. And it's a fascinating documentary, and I highly recommend it. I would give it like as close to a 9 out of 10 as possible. It's in my top 5 of the year so far. And that is a large list. I have seen, so far this year, I've seen 31 movies. That's counting some movies that I've seen at home, some movies that I've watched on Netflix, but all films that have come out, released to the public this year. So I've seen 31 so far. The next film I'm going to talk about also was a Sundance film, big awards darling. It's the first film from director Boots Riley, who is a very famous musician and rapper. He was with the band The Coop, and his film is Sorry to Bother You, starring Lakeith Stanfield from Atlanta. He was also in Get Out. That's Lakeith Stanfield there on the poster, and we have another photo that I liked. It's pretty much exactly, you see where they got the photo for the poster is in this photo right here, and that's why I wanted to have it. And I have a whole photo of the cast. On the top left, you have the director and writer, Boots Riley. Then you have Lakeith Stanfield, Tessa Thompson right next to him, who played Lakeith Stanfield's girlfriend. You have Armie Hammer, Terry Crews, Steve Yeun, who plays Glenn on Walking Dead. I can't think of his name, but the Old Spice guy, he's on the bottom left. And then you have Jermaine Fowler on the bottom, in the middle and the bottom. He was the writer and star of a show that I was a big fan of that just got canceled called Superior Donuts, who he's also in the film. And of course, on the bottom right is Danny Glover, no relation to Donald Glover. Danny Glover is in the film. He got an amazing cast together for this movie. Like all of these actors do an amazing job in the film. It is a very wild film. It's parts Get Out, parts blaxploitation, parts I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, parts Don't Drink Your Juice in the Hood, parts a lot of things. A Spike Lee movie on acid, a lot of people have said. So the best way to describe Sorry to Bother You without spoilers is very difficult. I would recommend just seeing. I recommend seeing all three of these films, because regardless how I feel on them, I think that all three are extremely fascinating and that you should definitely go see them. But Sorry to Bother You is a film starring Lakeith Stanfield in a alternate world that's also parts Idiocracy. Those are the other parts that I forgot to put in. Parts Idiocracy. It's this alternate world that is very different from ours, yet very similar from ours. And Lakeith Stanfield is a telemarketer who has to find his white voice that Danny Glover shows him. And it shows how he is a telemarketer and uses his white voice to get over in the world. And then it gets even more crazy and ridiculous as it goes on. It's quite crazy and absurd, and I don't want to spoil anything for you because it takes you on a ride, and it's super ambitious, and it's one of the most original ambitious movies I've seen the entire year. My problem with the film, and we can come back to me while I look sad as I say this, I really wanted to love the movie. I really wanted to love Sorry to Bother You. There are points at the movie where I was giving it an 8 out of 10. I was really with it. Again, I want to tell you more about the movie and more. I just go see Sorry to Bother You. Maybe one day I'll do a spoiler discussion on it. I don't really want to go into spoilers right now. But about halfway, it gets increasingly more absurd as it goes on, and you're either with it or you're not. If you watch the trailer, I highly recommend going and watch the trailer after you watch this video of Sorry to Bother You. If the film seems like something that you would want to see, I would say go for it. If not, it's not going to win you over, I don't think, if you're not on board by the trailer. But I really wanted to like it. I really did. I do like it, but I didn't love it. It's not one of my favorite movies of the year. I think it had a lot of amazing ideas, but as an actual story and in the film itself, it doesn't know how to actually put the story and all the ideas together. They have storylines that they bring up that they just completely drop that have no bearing. The actual white voice thing, which is the prominent part of the trailer and seems like it's the main point of the movie and is the main point of the movie for most of the movie, gets dropped towards the end of the movie. And then they do a couple of things to the characters that I didn't really like writing-wise, that I thought I liked the way you did it, but I didn't like the way you got there, which is the best way I can say it, which probably sounds so cryptic you have no idea what I'm talking about. But let's just say they establish something might happen to the character, and they go through 10 minutes saying it won't happen, and then it may or may not happen at the very end. And I don't like that that's the way they went through it, because they took so much time to establish that it wasn't going to happen just for it to happen anyway. And that's something I didn't really like, because it was just, to me, that seemed like bad writing. But I think it had a lot of amazing ideas, and I'm really looking forward to the next film Boots Riley makes, because I'm hoping that maybe with his second effort, he can really hone in a little more and be a little more not straightforward, because I like the fact that it's really out there and weird, but just in the story-wise and in the script-wise, can really focus in on the script of the actual story. Because I get what you were trying to do, and it's really bold and crazy and wacky and ridiculous, but you threw it all out there, and as a film like Get Out. I love Get Out. Get Out was my favorite film of last year. If you haven't seen Jordan Peele's Get Out, I don't know what you're doing with your life that you haven't watched this movie. You would probably watch the Kardashians or something instead of watching Get Out. Well, I don't know what you do. Watch Get Out. Watch Get Out. It's amazing. That film, I stood up, I was shaking, went home, I was still shaking, I shook for an hour. It was brilliant. That movie has a lot of ridiculous, crazy ideas, but they all come together, and it's one of those movies, the more you watch it, the more you see where all the pieces and the puzzles and how it went together. I haven't seen Sorry to Bother You a second time, but I feel like I will pick up on more things, but it's still not going to come together, because it was kind of just like a Jackson Pollock, just kind of just thrown out there. But it is I like it. I recommend watching it, but it was a disappointment to me. What was not the disappointment to me was my next film, and the last of the three films that I saw, which was also, I believe it was also in Sundance. It's also big loved by critically. All three of these films, I believe, have over 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, which Rotten Tomatoes, that doesn't mean that 90% of critics gave it a 9 out of 10, or every critic says a 9 out of 10. That means 90% of critics gave it a positive rating, which is great. But I just want to get that out there, because people get very confused on Rotten Tomatoes. A positive, like a movie that people just think is meh, could have a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, and everybody just gave it like a 6 out of 10. And it was just, just squeaked by. But I think all three of these films were worthy of getting positive ratings. But Sorry to Bother You is a take it or leave it kind of movie. You're either going to absolutely love it, or you're not going to be on board with it. I really love what they were trying to do, but I didn't love the execution. But it is a movie I would watch again. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because there's not much else I can say without spoiling the film. But the next film I have is a film I can go a little bit. I do kind of have to spoil a little bit of this, but again, this is a documentary. It's based on a true story. It is Three Identical Strangers. Three Identical Strangers is a documentary. It just came out. I actually saw it last night at a movie theater at the Stony Brook AMC. It's playing in 167 theaters all around the country. I highly recommend seeing this. It is a film of these three brothers, these three triplets, who did not meet each other until they were 19 years old. They were separated at birth. They all lived within a 100-mile radius of each other. They all smoked the same brand of cigarettes. They all were all on wrestling teams. They all have very similar personalities, sound the same, acted very similar. They all had an older sister that was adopted by the same agency as them, that was 21 years old. One got adopted by a middle-class family, one was adopted by a blue-collar family, one was adopted by a more affluent family. And they found each other at 19 when one of them went to the same college as one of the others went to previously, and it went huge in 1980. And they became so famous. They owned a restaurant in the city called Triplets. They had a small cameo in a Madonna film. They were huge. Apparently, my dad met them once. He told me that before. I did not know that until like 15 minutes ago, and it boggles the mind. He met them at a comedy club in the city in the 80s, because at one time they were going to try to do an act. I don't know how well it went over. I guess not the best, but the film is by far the best film I've seen this year. It is amazing. It takes so many different twists and turns. I'm going to spoil a little bit of this documentary because it is a true story, and if you look up the documentary, this is going to be the first stuff that pops up because it's the things that are most known about these triplets. So I would say if you don't want to hear it, just go watch the movie. Go see it right now. There's probably a showtime in like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Just you don't need to sit. Bring the kid. The kid can see this. This is a good kid movie. Bring the kid. It's 90 minutes. You'll have him back in time. What are you watching tonight? It's a Tuesday. You're just watching this. This is the best show. You got Laugh to Saves Lives after this. It's on Facebook Live. You can come back. You can watch it in the theater. Wait, it's Facebook Live. You can watch it in the theater. You can watch this. This is a companion piece to the film. So I highly recommend going to see this movie, but I am going to talk a little bit about the actual story that they do talk about in the film. So if you don't want to hear it, I recommend watching the movie and then coming back to this. Or sharing this to your friends too. So maybe they'll want to see the movie with you. So these triplets, they find out none of the parents were told that they were triplets. Were told that they weren't told anything, to be frankly considered, and they were constantly having people come by and doing tests on the kids and whatnot. What you find out is they were a part of a twin study and triplet study where they were taking in from 1960 to 1980, specifically in New York. There was a study where they took, I think it was, they don't know the exact number, but several sets of triplets, several sets of twins. I think this is the only triplets that we know of that they did this to. But they separated them at birth and then did experiments on them of nature versus nurture. Because you have a twin, you have an identical person. You have somebody who is identical to one another. So you could put one in a affluent family and one in a poor family and see which one is gonna come out, nature versus nurture. And that's exactly what they did. And this was a real thing that happened. This was a real thing that took place. And it's fascinating and disturbing. And I don't want to talk more about it. I just highly recommend seeing the movie. But it's one of the most fascinating looks on humanity and what we as people will do to try to learn something, to the point that we'll, take these kids that were triplets that were together for 6 months, separate them, and put them in different families. And we never had a plan of ever telling them that they were triplets. It is just fascinating and completely mind-boggling to me. And I highly recommend seeing the movie. It's my favorite movie of the year. It has laughs. It has twists and turns. There's more to it that I'm not going to give away because it would do a disservice to you and to the film. But know going in that there is this study that they were a part of. And if you were to go on YouTube and type this in, it's going to come up. So that's why I felt like it was okay to tell you. I hope you're not mad. Let's still be friends. Heart. Yeah, so to recap, both documentaries I saw, Won't You Be My Neighbor and Three Identical Strangers, two of the best documentaries that I've ever seen. I think Three Identical Strangers might be the best documentary that I've ever seen, just based on the subject matter, how it was done, the way they weaved the story. I thought there was a couple of reviews that I read from fans online that didn't like it, saying it was biased. I thought that it was extremely unbiased. I thought they did a really good job of showing why the scientists would do something like this and why it's terrible. And I think most people would lean on the side of it being terrible. But I thought they did kind of show that he wasn't doing it as a terrible thing. He was doing it to be not a mad scientist, but he was trying to do something that was never done before, and to try to, in his mind, stomp out the nature versus nurture debate and to once and for all end it. Did he? You have to find out. You have to watch the documentary to find that out. But I highly recommend both documentaries. And Sorry to Bother You, I also recommend, but I was disappointed in it because I thought there's a film last year that me and my friends, I took 2 of my friends to see it. They knew nothing about the movie, and it blew our minds. And it's a film called Brigsby Bear that came out last year that was written and starring one of the writers of Saturday Night Live, and Greg Kinnear's in it, and it was a small movie. Mark Hamill's in it. It's a small movie about a very serious subject matter, and it's so wacky and ridiculous, but it has so much heart, and it's so ridiculous, but it has an amazing story, and you're with it the whole time. And I thought Sorry to Bother You could be what Brigsby Bear was for me last summer, but it just wasn't that. That might be me, but I did like Sorry to Bother You. Just it was a disappointment. Up until the last third, I was like, this movie's an 8 out of 10. And then the last third knocked it down to a high 5 to a low 6. And it's not, there's a big twist that Armie Hammer's character has. It's not that. It's what they did with that, without me spoiling anything. I do recommend seeing it. It's a film that my friends would highly love. My friends, I don't know if they're watching, but Andrew and Christy, they would definitely love this movie. It's definitely a Nothing But Trouble. Nothing But Trouble is a Chevy Chase film that I hate, but some of my friends love. Where Dan Aykroyd plays a bunch of different characters. John Candy plays like 18 different characters. That movie's a whole nother. I need like 6 hours to talk about that movie, and so does my therapist. But I think, my dad texts me, there's no such thing as a bucket of steam, you nincompoop. All right, so I think he's back. I think we're going to cut to a break. And then we come back, me and my dad are going to talk about a movie that both of me and my dad love, Children of Men. I highly recommend you staying put, and thank you for watching. And we're going to cut to a break. We're going to be right back.
Get it all, baby. Right here. YouTube.
Right here.
Subscribe, man.
Hey, what's going on? I got Iceland Family Haircut is here. Anytime you need a haircut, stop on in. My name is Janet, and you need to see Benny TV. What an idiot. You gotta see this guy. He's great. Adios.
Sandy, she's the funniest girl in town. Sandy, she loves the crowd around. Sandy, don't let her near your kids. Sandy, she's so smart and so innocent. Sandy, she easily pays the rent. Sandy, she'll kill you and eat your flesh. Sandy, she drives a Celica. Sandy, she has a good sense of smell like a Sandy, denies 9/11.
It was an inside job.
And we're back with my special guest, Steamy McDaniel. Steamy.
There is no such thing. I even posted while this show was on. You can't buy a bucket of steam. There was no such
I just don't
thing.
think you're looking hard enough.
Somebody told me if I went in the shower, I might capture it like you capture lightning bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just do that for a couple hours.
Yeah, that's like having a bottle full of air, right?
Yeah.
And I believed you. That's the problem, is I believed that I could get a bucket of steam. And
I told you, CVS.
and you told me
right down the road.
You told me it was for a prop. What
Yeah.
prop? For one of the movies that you were talking about?
Yeah, the Three Identical Strangers, super spooky. King Friday for Mr. Rogers. He seemed a little steamy.
And that other movie I read the review on that one. Sorry to bother you.
Sorry to bother you.
Yes, I read the review on that, and the critics did like it. And I know you always bring up Newsday because you don't like that I read critics.
In 2006, Newsday said they gave The Departed 2.5 stars, and they said that Jack Nicholson phoned in his performance, and that's why I phone in my Newsdays.
And many
I don't buy Newsday. I
years-
give them the money and I tell them keep it, give it to the Post, who deserve it.
many years before you were born,
Many years.
Jack Nicholson was in the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which also got a 2-star review, and they said Jack Nicholson's performance almost pulls it off.
Newsday?
Newsday.
Crooks.
And
Crooks, I tell you.
And guess what? It won Best Picture, it won Best Director, it won Best Actor, and Nurse Ratched won Best Supporting Actress. So
You're
that's.
no fan of mine.
But you never know with
That was from
movies.
Holt.
You never know with movies because there are some movies you think that you see and you think are great or fantastic, and other people don't like them. Like.
But see, there are reviewers that I do love that I follow now. There's a lot of them online. William Bibbiani, critically acclaimed as him, and Whitney Seibold. They have a website. They're amazing reviewers. And I always recommend using Rotten Tomatoes, when I was talking about Rotten
Right,
Tomatoes
yes.
before. The best way to use that is to find reviewers that have similar tastes and sensibilities to you. And watching their reviews or reading their reviews, because that's the best way to gauge whether or not you would like something. Because if you are using reviewers like, for example, the Newsday people, obviously they don't have the same taste as us.
No.
Not at all. They might have some, they're not crooks. I'm just kidding. But they don't have the same taste as me, so they're not people that
And some of the movies they like, we're like, well, what are you basing this on? Wait a
Yeah.
minute.
I have a friend who's still mad because he saw War Horse, because they said War Horse is amazing, and he brings it up every week. Kevin, you don't stop talking about how much you hate War Horse. We get it. You don't like War Horse.
Now, a review, the one thing with I don't mind a review, even if it's a review that I disagree with.
Yes.
As long as I don't like they do the spoilers. I don't like giving away. I hate when they do that.
That was the thing. Roger Ebert did that to me once, and it got you really mad at me. And this is a spoiler for Zombieland, which is 10 years old almost.
Yeah.
Roger Ebert, in his review for Zombieland, said that Bill Murray was in the movie, and he got so mad at me when I told him Bill Murray was in the movie. And I'm like, Roger Ebert said in his review, he's like, I didn't read it.
I got mad because I did read the Newsday review, which said loved the movie. They praised it, and they said that they bring a celebrity into the movie, and they do it in such a unique way that they bring a celebrity into the movie.
I thought they did a good job.
And they did a great job with it. But okay, I'll bring up 2 other spoilers. One is Blade Runner 2049. They tell you something. They tell you something about Ryan Gosling that you find out in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But you don't need to go into the movie learning that. And then the one that still bothers me to this day, and still, if I ever met the reviewer, they would find him in the trunk of a Cadillac Seville. He wouldn't be dead. But
It's probably not the one I'm thinking of, but
No, Godfather Part 2.
They told you De Niro was in it.
No one knew who De Niro was back then. No, they told me about
They told you Fredo.
Kay Adams and the baby. They gave that away because the guy hated the movie. All right, and this is a movie that went on
To win Best Picture and still one of the best sequels of all time.
won the most awards of any movie at that time. The guy went on. He hated it so much that he actually said that halfway through the movie it looked like the film was dipped in marinara sauce. Okay, and he gave away that.
I could write an essay about how wrong that is.
Yeah, but
You can say that about Part 3.
Oh, Part 3 is.
I'm 20 minutes into Part 3, and I'm going to stay that way for a while.
Part 3 is terrible. It's a shame. It's terrible.
But
And Part 3 was never supposed to be called The Godfather Part 3.
yeah,
Coppola wanted to call it The Death of Michael Corleone,
yeah.
which so people wouldn't associate it because he knew it wasn't as strong.
The thing I was thinking of with the critic was when the new Westworld came out. My dad's a big fan of the original Westworld. He's a big fan of Michael Crichton. He read a review from, I believe it was New York Post,
Yes, it was the Post.
that didn't like the new show Westworld because it didn't have robots in it. Which, if you've seen the show Westworld, which clearly this reviewer didn't, you would see there's robots in the show.
Okay,
So
but-
I don't know what that guy was watching.
All right, but since we're going to be talking about science fiction in a couple
Yes,
of
we're
seconds.
very heavily.
So, just to say, way back when they were writing stories, there were robots and they went to androids,
Yeah.
cyborgs, cybernetics. It wasn't until Blade Runner actually brought out the bioengineering.
Yeah.
So they're not really robots per se. They're bioengineered. And that's what Westworld, but this guy just said they weren't robots. He didn't say they were bioengineered or anything. He just said that. So I said to you, why do I want to watch Westworld? There are no robots in it.
Yeah, and
so,
I watched the show and I'm like, there's robots in it.
so they don't call them robots in it. They're bioengineered now. That's a new thing. Biogenetics.
I think they call them hosts in
Yeah, and they're
in
replicants,
Westworld.
replicants in Blade. And you know what? Blade Runner and Hampton Fancher, I give him credit because he took that science fiction theme and he added it. He
I'm
brought
going
it
to add a
out.
Blade Runner counter for how many times you bring up Blade Runner 2049. 'Cause I'm pretty sure it's 3 times a
Well,
week.
I'm bringing up the first one, but that they went, and then, David Peoples, who came in as like the script doctor for the first script, he added the term replicant because he actually got it from his daughter who dealt with biogenetics and was saying replicant. So now it's different than it was the Isaac Asimov and the robot thing. So I can understand that, but this reviewer for Westworld, the TV reviewer, just wasn't clear. He just.
So in conclusion, my dad loves Blade Runner.
But also, in conclusion, if you want to see a movie or a TV show, don't go by somebody else's opinion.
No, just watch
It could ruin it for you. And I'll tell you, a movie that got ruined by a reviewer and it took me years, and you watched the movie before I did, A Bronx Tale. Because I read the review on A Bronx Tale.
Bronx Tale's amazing. I only didn't
It's
see it because you were like,
Yeah, because
And then I had friends. My good friend Christian loves A Bronx Tale. It's one of, if not his favorite movie of all time. And he finally showed it to me one night, and it was late. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's like, I'm showing you this movie. And I stayed at his house like 6 a.m. watching it because I was like, this movie is amazing.
it's an amazing
And I
movie.
quote it all the time. Anytime somebody says go to the bathroom, I go, put him in the bathroom, throw a towel over his head. I don't want that face seeing this face over here.
It's an excellent movie, and I let the critic get the best.
Frankie Coffee Cake, no good.
I let the critic get the best of me on that one. So, it's an excellent movie.
And our good friend is in that.
Yes.
Is he in that scene too? Is he in that scene?
I don't think he's at the pool table, isn't he?
He's at the pool table. We have to ask him.
We have to ask him. Our good friend who's going to be on the next show.
Should be on the next show.
Yeah.
Should be, usually is on Laughter Saves Lives, live. Pat Marone.
Pat Marone is in it.
Was in A Bronx Tale.
And I
we
met
didn't know him then.
I met the other guy. I met the one friend of.
Well, Mario, the one that does the Mario.
Yeah, the Mario.
Yeah, the Mario test.
Yeah, I met that guy.
You gotta give him the test. What test? The Mario test? Don't listen to Mario. He's an idiot.
Yeah.
I've only seen him like 3
All right.
times.
So anyway,
Well, before we talk about the movie we're going to talk about, you wanted to talk about the 3 Identical Strangers.
okay,
really
yes.
quickly.
Yeah, because you told us. So I'll tell you a little bit more. You said there should be no spoiler alert if you're from Long Island.
It
you
is
know
a
that-
true. It's a true
And
story.
I'll tell you, my connection with it was I used to read Newsday all the time back then in the
And
80s.
Newsday actually is what broke that story. They have a Newsday editor in the movie.
I read the article of this one young man is in college, and people are coming up to him saying, hey, they're talking to him, telling them things about what they were doing, and what about some girl was mad at him. I thought you were gonna call me, and all. And he's like, what's going on? I don't even know these people. And then he found out that there was someone who looked exactly like him, an identical twin brother. So the article was he had a twin brother. 2 days later in Newsday,
It's revealed that there's a third.
that said that because the third was reading the newspaper.
Yeah, and they
he's-
talk about that in the movie.
And
It's
he
fascinating.
says, Mom, and I still remember the storyline. He says, Mom, you're not going to believe this. I have two brothers. And that's when they found out they were triplets. And then I went, there was a comedy club, an East Side Comedy Club. So when I told the East Side 15 minutes ago, it was in Long Island, Huntington, Long
Yeah, I
Island.
wasn't alive when the
Yeah,
club existed.
It was,
to be
it was
fair.
the best comedy club on Long Island ever. And take nothing away from the Governor's three clubs. They're excellent. They know how to do a comedy show. You want to see a great comedy show, go to Governor's. Richie Minervini, who owned East Side, and you've heard of
Yes, I know that name.
Yeah, Richie.
He's in a lot of Kevin James movies.
Yes, and was on the King of Queens.
He was on the King of Queens. He was
In
not the King
11.
of Queens, though.
Okay, so anyway, the East Side Comedy Club used to have this great show on Wednesday nights, which was a combination open mic and improv group called the Laughter Company, who was Bobby Nelson, Rosie O'Donnell, just to name two of them, Vinnie Mark. There was a bunch of people who went on to fame and fortune, or fame anyway, and so.
Or just fame.
So they would come on, and then other people would do Black Elvis. There was a Black Elvis.
Elvis?
Oh, he was amazing. Black Elvis was amazing. So we go one night. My friend Steve, who I've mentioned before, was a headliner back then. We went to East
Elvis
Side.
is real.
Went to
Hashtag Elvis is real.
Black Elvis was amazing, and I just remember that because Steve was outside talking to his friends, comedy friends, and he was a big Elvis fan. And I see this guy, and he was so amazing doing a cappella Elvis. It was amazing. I told Steve, talk to your friends later, come over here. Steve was so enthralled by this guy that when the guy was done, Steve went up to him and said, that was amazing. And he went, thank you, man. Thank you very much. And
That was Elvis.
Steve's like, he's Elvis. He was so. A friend of ours was the host of that show. He was the MC, and he was talking to these three guys there, and he's doing jokes. And then he says, "All right, who's next? Who's going up next?" Oh, the triplets, and it was them.
It was them?
And it was them, and they were sitting up front. They were three very handsome guys. They had all the attractive girls
Yeah.
were over by them and everything. And they went up and they had T-shirts. Each one was Ippity, Bippity, and Boop.
Oh, okay.
And the act they did was very, very Catskill generic, and Steve's idea was that some old style agent said, all right, kids, we're going to put together an act, and some agent, you're going to call you Ippity, Bippity, Boop. And it was like a very old-fashioned type of thing. I met them that one time only. They were very nice. They were like the nicest, real gentlemen, great guys. And, and it's a shame what happened to them. It's a shame how they were treated.
And there's a lot more of the story that neither of us are talking about.
Right.
But I think you haven't even seen it, but I know you really want to watch it.
And I really want to watch it because, as I told you, I remember when it happened.
You know the whole story,
And
yeah.
then for years,
There's even more to the story now.
Right. Every once in a while, you hear a little bit about. And I think that since we are in America, though, and I'll get to what they should go after those doctors and everything, and say what you did was horrible because that.
Well, part of it is it might have been government funded.
All right, because
That's another thing. The big journalist that actually is the one that was able to uncover everything is the same journalist that wrote The Looming Tower, which just became the show on Hulu about the people who, with 9/11, how they might have known the things they could have done to prevent it, Looming Tower.
Yeah.
It's the same journalist. he was the one that found all this stuff, and he's in it as well. And they talk about there's a lot of stuff we don't know, but it was some of the most. It was very, very large corporations, and possibly maybe there was some government involvement that we may
All
not
right,
know
because
about.
what
But I understand, and they did try, and they're not even trying to sue. They're just trying to get the information about the study. And they
Yeah.
can't even get that right now.
you know what?
They're starting to get it, but a lot of it's redacted.
I want you all to watch a very good science fiction movie called The Boys from Brazil. And it's about Dr. Joseph Mengele, who cloned Hitler 80-something times. The real Dr. Mengele did experiments with twins.
Yeah,
and
no, that's
triplets.
true.
So that's why I don't like what they did to these boys. And you had 3 triplets. You want to see if they're identical? Look, my father was a twin.
Yeah,
And him and his brother didn't look anything alike.
No.
But they were alike.
they were very much
They were
alike.
very much alike. One loved baseball, one loved food. One passed away during the World Series, the other one passed away on Thanksgiving.
It's true. A month away from each
A
other.
month away from it. And my Uncle Charlie was born 30 minutes before my father. So he died 30 days
before
my father. And
Mm-hmm.
so I know twins. I know how they were. I know.
No, that movie really touched me, Three Identical Strangers, on multiple levels. Also,
wanna
because,
see
you know, I'm an only child, so as an only child, you always have that what if I was adopted thing. I
Yeah.
know I'm not. But, like, what if I was adopted and I had a twin brother that's exactly like me? The world can't have two of me.
Yeah.
It would burn down. But it's so fascinating, and it's so
I don't
touching.
feel there's
and
any
it's so-
spoilers with that because it's a story that.
I mean,
you
it does
can
because the
find
way
out.
they
Yeah.
present it in the movie.
I
it
do want to
is
see
a
it.
true story. So if you look it up, that's what's going to come up.
I do want to. I'm very interested. When I saw they made that movie, I'm very interested.
No, it's amazing.
Yes.
But
So-
we so get to the main
Let's
topic
get
at hand. We're here to talk about Children of Men, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my personal top 10. I know you love it as well.
I would put it in my personal top 10 also.
Yeah, it's from Alfonso Cuarón, who did not win an Academy Award for this film, but he did win Best Director for Gravity, along as his cinematographer, Emmanuel Lubezki, who not only won for Gravity, but he also won for The Revenant and Birdman in back-to-back years.
Wow.
Actually, all 3 of those were in a row. He won, this cinematographer is such a good cinematographer, he won 3 Academy Awards in a row
Wow.
with 2 different directors. Because he did it with Alfonso Cuarón, and then he did it with the director of The Revenant and Birdman, who has a very long name that escapes me. It's the film starring Clive Owen, Julianne Moore, Michael Caine, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Charlie Hunnam from Sons of Anarchy, one of his first films. And I'll let you talk about the film really quickly.
All right.
What it's about.
What it's about that all of a sudden one day humans could no longer reproduce. They could not have children. So for 20 years there were no babies being born and madness took over the world.
Yeah, and essentially it's a post-apocalyptic dystopian sci-fi film set in a world where children haven't been born in about 20 years, and it starts off with the last child being born was assassinated.
Right.
And that's where the film starts.
He was assassinated because he got tired of doing autographs for people and getting bothered everywhere.
Because he was a celebrity for being the last person on
being
Earth.
the last person on Earth. And they knew that everybody was going to die now. There was a mortality. We knew humanity. And I love, there's one scene where Clive Owen is on a train, and now the trains have to have screens because people are throwing rocks at you. People are blowing up buildings, and they don't care.
And it takes place in London, which is the last city left. All other cities have been destroyed. The last actual civilization is London, and it's a very dour world. It's a world where everyone knows that they're the last generations left. They have one of the darker aspects of the movie is there is a sleeping pill, but it's not a sleeping pill, it's a suicide pill that you can take, that people are taking. I think it's called Quietus.
Quiet. If you want to commit suicide.
If you want to commit suicide, because that's what the world's become, because it's a film in a world of no hope.
Right, yes.
It's a film of no hope and no future. And it's an amazing film that I feel like, because of the dour subject, is a film that isn't talked about as much as it should. And it was nominated for a couple of Academy Awards. I think sound editing, film editing. It should have been nominated for cinematography because it has some of the best cinematography that I've ever seen. It has some of the most amazing long takes.
Absolutely.
Scenes that shouldn't be so intense are intense because of the cinematography, because you're not following around a super soldier or, a cop or anything. Clive Owen is just an everyman. He's a man who is a man who's down on his luck, down on the world, depressed, resigned with the fact that there is no hope left in the world. And he happens to be the ex-husband of Julianne Moore, who is the leader of this resistance that is against London and the government. And she is in possession, which you find out within the first 20 minutes of the movie, it's in the trailer, of a woman who is a black African woman who is the first pregnant woman in the past 20 years.
Right. And no one knows.
No one knows, and they're trying to keep it a secret from the government because, in their words, the government wouldn't want the first child to be born in 20 years to be a black child. So it has some amazing themes, stories, and it is based on a book by P.D. James. We should mention that. It is based on a book. I never read the book. I know you read some of the book. You read excerpts,
some of it. I didn't.
And it's very different. It's a very different.
But that's not why I do want to read it. That's not why I didn't read it. There is some differences, but the movie, the screenplay is excellent. The acting, Clive Owen's performance.
It's one of the best performances.
One of the best.
It's probably his best performance, and I love Clive Owen as an actor. But to me, I think it is his best performance.
And there's one line, as I was saying, when they were on the train, because this is a type of movie, as he was saying, you see, like when you saw Get Out, you have to see it over. This movie
it has so many layers.
There's so many layers that the first time you miss a lot, and you have to see it again. He's on the train, and there's graffiti as the train's going by that says, "The last one to die, turn out the light."
Yeah.
Which is like this very cynical type of joke of, the last one to go. And he has a cousin that's saving art. He says to his cousin, "Why are you doing that?"
You're not doing this for anyone.
Yeah.
He's going around saving all these famed art pieces. He has the statue of David in his house.
Yeah.
And the leg is broken, and they had to fix it.
They had to put a hydraulic jack on.
He's telling them how they got it, and he says to him, "Why are you doing this? Why? No one's gonna be around for any of this."
And he says, "I just don't give it much thought."
Yeah, he's like, "I don't think about it."
I don't think about it. And the one who plays his cousin, he's been around. He's a character actor.
He's Danny something. But he is he's the villain. He plays Colonel Stryker in X-Men Origins Wolverine. He's also one of the villains in Wonder Woman. Danny Houston.
Danny Houston. Excellent actor. He's really good in this.
Great. And also, the director I was looking for earlier was Alejandro Gianaratu, who did Birdman and The Revenant, who is Emmanuel Lubezki's other director that he won Academy Awards with.
Now, Children of Men did not do very well in the box office.
It didn't. I think it has to do with the subject matter. It's not an easy sell. It's a hard movie to me to get friends to watch because of the hard sell, because of the subject matter.
Yeah,
I don't think
Mom even watched it with us.
It's a film that just, I feel like it pulls you in. We never even talk about Michael Caine's character.
Michael Caine
is a weed dealer. He's a weed dealer
who makes his own type of weed.
Strawberry cough.
Strawberry
you take a hit, you cough, and you taste strawberries.
And you taste strawberry. And he was a what was he?
He was a scientist.
I thought he was a political cartoonist.
That's what he was. He was a political
cartoonist, and his wife.
He knew scientists. That's why he
knew scientists, but he was a political cartoonist. His wife was a journalist. We won't say too much it's a very important movie. It's a great movie, and
It has
now-
so many amazing themes. The character arcs are brilliant. What they do and how they show, rebellions in the government, and they do some amazing things with the storylines and the characters that you wouldn't expect. You would expect, it's a story of they're trying to get this woman to what's called the Human Project, which is this almost a fable that all the most famous scientists in the world are somewhere on a boat traveling around the world trying to solve this crisis. And they're trying to meet up with them. And that's the whole point. And Clive Owen has no special skills. He is just a guy whose cousin works for the government with this famous art, so he's able to get this woman a visa. But she has to go with him. And that's the only reason why he's involved in this story.
He's one of
He's
those-
not. He's just an everyman. This could be you. It could just be you getting pulled into the situation.
Just got
which
pulled
is-
into one
and
of
it's
those
somebody
stories,
who's
yeah.
lost faith, and then here comes faith. Here comes hope. Here
Yeah.
comes this something brilliant, something amazing.
And then Michael Caine's in it throughout. He's a character actor in it with a small part, but very important. And he's got enough great scenes. And he's just, if you love Michael Caine, you should see him in this movie, because this is a role that not any actor could play. And to see Michael Caine playing a hippie, he's actually a hippie.
And by far my favorite Alfonso Cuarón film, and I think he's an amazing director. He did Gravity. He also directed Prisoner of Azkaban, which is considered not by most, but by a lot of people as one of the best Harry Potter films.
It's one of my favorites.
Which
I
is
just
the
saw it
third
the
one.
other night.
Yeah, I love Prisoner of Azkaban. And he's just what he brings to a movie, the sort of gravitas and the feel, and it really feels like a really lived-in world.
Yes.
It feels like a lived-in world that's not on the brink of collapse, it's already collapsed. It's a world that is post the end of the world. The world's over. This is just the dying light. And then there's one last flicker of hope, and you get to see that. And it's brilliant.
It's a great, you put it beautifully. Now, one of the reasons it's on my list is because you were saying sci-fi. I consider this is a science fiction film.
100%.
100%. And the problem I have with a lot of people, not of any age, when I tell them that science fiction is a story like Children of Men, or and science fiction is not Star Wars.
Yeah, it's not
They don't
always
know-
Star Wars.
They
yeah.
don't know what I mean by that. Science fiction is sometimes just a great story. Batman is science fiction. It's a man who dresses up like
Spider-Man is science fiction.
Okay, but not
Batman. I want to say Batman. Superman is science fiction. I want to say
Right.
there are villains in Batman that are science fiction. I wouldn't
But
say Batman science fiction.
I would say Batman for the fact that he dresses up like a bat. He does,
I wouldn't say that's science
All
fiction.
right. Okay.
But there are other superheroes that I would say, like the Flash, is science fiction.
Right.
It's the man with the ability to run.
Right. And Children of Men is more science fiction than Star Wars.
It's more science fiction than Batman. I'll tell you that much.
It's more science fiction. It's an amazing movie. I'm glad that you allowed me to come on your show tonight.
I mean, if only you brought the steam.
I know. What was the effect of the steam?
Well, now we'll never know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Ryan Rizzuti takeover of Benny TV. I think we're gonna do this once a month.
Once a month, Ryan.
Once a
will
month, I'm
do it.
gonna do my own show.
And I won't necessarily be on.
No, he might not necessarily be on, but the steam wasn't the best idea that I had.
And next week, I'll be doing a show. I might have some guests on or call in, and we could tell what we're doing on July 31st.
Yes, we can.
We can. We're doing a Batman show.
We're gonna do a Batman show,
with
all about the famous science fiction character Batman.
There are science fiction stories with Batman.
Well, yeah, Man-Bat.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there are a lot of science fiction stories. He fights Superman.
Superman is a science
We're going to
fiction.
talk about Batman at the end
on
of the
July
month. so
31st.
on July 31st.
And we're going to have a few surprise guests.
Surprise guests.
Two surprise guests.
Who knows who it could be? It
Yes.
could be anybody.
It could be two of the.
It could be Batman.
It could be Batman.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night. We'll see you soon. Laughter Saves Lives live coming up next. Stay tuned.